So there we go. Yep, we're all good. So I'm just going to say my light source is coming from this direction, and we'll get on with it. So if you work quick enough, you can do an outline and it not really show up much at all on your number one surface that you're trying to keep light. So just lay that tip over and just try and keep it tidy. And we're trying to work smooth at a reasonable pace because it helps the fade. And if you get some kind of lighter patches in there, it's okay. It kind of adds to the texture. And I mean, this little bit here that I've done over, that's fine because these sides are going to be darker anyway, so you're not really going to see that. And then we'll go in and we'll fill the other edges in. So when we start with the wood grain, you obviously need a base colour, and just pretend that you can just kind of work it back over the top. So we just need that base colour for the wooden, obviously. And yeah, I'm going to do a series of these ones. I'm not just going to have this one-off one for the wood grain because there's so many different issues you have, because this is more of a blonde coloured wood, if you will, where you get the darker, more kind of Remu colours and stuff as well, and they're a little bit trickier to do. So let's see. Yeah, and I mean, I could have just gone over this whole thing with one shade and not really worried about trying to do the sides separate, but I guess it's good practice. And what you do find is that the edges and the surfaces do tend to just read a little bit better when you do it this way, but it's not kind of a must. Okay. So it's starting to look not bad. I'll have to go over flip this over the other side as per usual. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and put the wood grain pattern up on this here now. So I'm just going to have a looser, kind of lighter pattern. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of emulate how wood grows. So but what you should see is kind of like a direction of how it travels. And then we want to carry this onto this top surface. So this kind of gives you an idea of the scale of the piece of wood, where if it was bigger, then these would be separate pieces of wood. Because I mean, part of getting the wood grain right, particularly depending on what product you're doing, is you're going to need to know the piece you're doing is kind of constructed, and like, well, how many pieces of wood would I make it out of, etc., to make that look a little bit more realistic. Right, and this is going to be kind of a funny edge piece here. The grain has been cut down the edge, so yeah, I mean, you need to actually look at some cut wood to help actually understand how the wood grains are going to go together and make it done a little bit more effectively. And I'm just kind of looking at how I'm wanting some of these to talk to each other, and it's kind of a little bit too uniform, so I'm just going to change that one up there, and I'm just going to get it to kind of join there, and I can have a little piece poke in there just to give a little bit more visual interest to it. So I will flip the page and I'm going to colour this in, and then we're going to go from there. Right, so let's make sure I'm actually colouring the right side. No, I wasn't, so there we go, just so I checked. And the parts of this, when we go over it, is going to look a little bit messy, and it's just when it fades up that these, and they soften, because they do look actually quite messy and quite terrible when you first get some of the wood grain on. And right, so that is at this stage. Right, okay, so down to that thin edge, and this top edge, I'm going to need to just rub them lighter, because it's going to have that line show through too much, and it's going to kind of contradict what I'm doing. But yeah, you need those lines in there lightly, obviously, to kind of give yourself a guide. Right, so that there is looking like the grain's there, but it's looking quite hokey. Because there's no way you're going to say, oh, yep, awesome, that's great. So what we need to do is we're going to just need to just do a few strokes in and around this, and just keeping it real light and trying to work quite quick, so we want it to fade and just kind of blend in. So if we work faster, what you're going to find is it is actually going to blend a bit, and so until it does that blend, it looks really terrible. So we want this to be thicker, because what we find with wood grain is it's not going to be a thin line. Sometimes you get it kind of fills in on like one side, fills in. So looking at the grains, you'll see kind of how it behaves a bit. And again, this is a natural product. It's not all going to be all clean and uniform. So there's a certain amount of kind of style and just being a little bit trusting with this. And I mean, yeah, I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I want it to kind of look all tidy and perfect, but in this case, perfect is actually going to work against you to a certain extent. So just kind of work a little bit light and loose. And then it's going to kind of just give it a little bit more of a natural type look with it. Right, and then see, yeah, we want some of this to carry through to the top as well, because it's kind of like thick here, then suddenly it goes just down to thin. So, and yeah, you can see some of the ones now we've gone over that look quite dark before are now kind of fainting and fading off rather and disappearing. So just kind of go back through and work over it, because once it dries a bit again, you're going to see, oh yeah, it's actually not showing through up anywhere near as much as it was before. Right, okay, and then we're going to work back over this number 3 side where you can barely see any wood grain. And then, yeah, unfortunately, it's probably going to work best if you have another like marker colour that's darker. You can get away with a colour pencil, and for wood grain, colour pencil is probably a really nice one to do these fades a lot more easily without having to be so kind of fiddly with it. But yeah, if you're going to get this darker colour, it's kind of use it a little bit as an accent. So it's going to be used a little bit sparingly. But you want it kind of thicker and thinner in parts, because we want that kind of natural, you know, ununiformness about it. And then, yeah, up the top here, just be real thin and just kind of not even filling in all the bits. Just really in some of the parts where the grain's a little bit darker. It's just enough to kind of accent it and make it stand out. And then, yeah, on this side here, we want it to come into that front edge. And I mean, this side here, you wouldn't necessarily get this side if you're using bigger pieces of wood. You'd get those kind of cuts, or like if it was cut short, you'd only see like that on the edge there. So then it would change the way it looks. So yet again, I'm going to need to work back over this side. And I mean, this with it being the number 3 side, if it's kind of a little bit too far gone, then again you can go over the whole side again, which I'm actually wanting to do. So hopefully it's had enough time to just dry and soak some more of that ink up before I go over and undo what I just did. Right, okay. Pretty much finished, except for what we want to do in terms of rendering and just trying to lift it is these lines that I rubbed out for these edges. Really what you're going to be seeing on down there is white, because it's kind of a reflection, and I'm just going to put a little bit of white pencil just to help lift it as well. And what it does is it just helps kind of emphasize light on the surface a bit. And because we're working across on this surface here, and then I can get just a little bit, like we can cut this out if we want, just to tidy things up, but the quickest way, if you can't really be bothered, is just using a bit of a black marker just to tidy the edges up, or sorry, black kind of pilot pen if you will. And you can afford to make the darker side slightly thicker, which is good in my case. And then just very thin on that top edge, because it's a light surface, so we want to kind of keep it the light surface. And then along this bottom edge, which will tidy it up further, and then we're going to chuck it just a shadow, because I believe all products should be grounded unless you're deliberately holding it up in the air and you're looking kind of up at it. But you can see that's even lifted it again just a bit there with that. And sorry, I'll just come in and tinker kind of through through just a bit more. Right, and yes, shadow. So I'll just zoom out a bit so you can see that.